Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast for episode 116. One of the most anticipated games of 2024 has been released, and we have been playing a lot of Dragon's Dogma 2. And today's episode is going to be all about all of our impressions with Dragon's Dogma 2. Joining me, as always, my sweet dumpster boy, Kamen Darty. Kamen, welcome to the show. How are you?
Patrick.
Hey, man.
There was a moment in time.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I think it was when we did. I think there's been a couple moments in time. One, I think, Patrick, was when we did Fantasy Critic, our first Fantasy Critic of the year. And then I want to say I did it again. I think when we had Mondo on to talk about Final Fantasy Rebirth.
Okay.
I said, and Dragon's Dogma 2 be game of the year.
Yeah.
And I said, someone screenshot it. Someone record it. And I have a feeling John probably did.
He probably did.
The question is, Patrick, do I still feel the same way?
We're about to find out because we got a lot of video game stuff to talk about, because this is the Spotlight Games podcast where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod, or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. So be sure to follow us there so that you're notified when we go live, so you can be part of the conversation. Also, tomorrow night, if you're live, last night, if you're listening to this on the day of release, or just go to YouTube and see, we're going to be streaming some more Stardew Valley right here on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. If you've been listening to the podcast for the last several weeks, we've usually been streaming The Last of Us Part 2 on Wednesdays, but sadly, my PlayStation 5 is dead, and I got to get it fixed. So in the meantime, we're going to be farming and finding love over in Stardew Valley's 1.6 update. We got Cognitive Clips in the chat. Lurking and twerking. You better be twerking. Send me a video. Finally, join the Discord. We got a fun little Discord where we discuss what we're playing and generally goof off together about video games. So if that sounds like something you'd like, click the link in the description. Click the link in the bios of our socials. Join the Discord. We're having a good time. Kamen, we have so much to discuss and so little to discuss, really. Today, we're really just talking about Dragon's Dogma 2 because there's that much to discuss. But first, we got to start this episode like we always start our episodes, with what we've been playing. Kamen, I know that you have only been playing Dragon's Dogma 2. So you might be asking yourself, dear sweet listener, if you guys are just going to talk about Dragon's Dogma 2, is the whole segment of the show what we're playing? No. It's not, because Kamen last week.
Sure. Yes. Mm-hmm.
For people that didn't listen to the podcast or watch the podcast on youtube.com/@SpotlightGamesPod. Stupid that they do the /@. I think it's silly. We talked about the best sports games of all time. We ranked them. We did a top 10, Kamen. And in that episode, we talked about, I'm not going to say where it ranked in the episode. I'm not going to say if it was number 1 or 2 came in. But we talked about a little game called Backyard Baseball.
Sure, we did.
And last week on Friday, Dragon's Dogma 2 had just come out. The night before, I had played about an hour of it before I went to bed, before I got my little Betty Bye time. Mm-hmm. And Friday morning rolls around. I'm supposed to be working, but it's a little before work starts. Like, I'm just going to be naughty.
Define when work starts for you.
I won't, because what if they're listening?
Good call.
No, a normal business time came in.
Sure. Normal business time.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I got this fucking PC that I bought and spent a lot of money on. How much, I'm not willing to say. Why don't I just go find Backyard Baseball? Last week in the chat, friend of the show, Sydney, dropped a link to go play it in a browser. I said, that's not enough. I said, I want it to not have little advertisements on the side. I want to go full screen and see nothing but Pablo Sanchez's little belly coming out of that shirt. So I went and I found a very legal way to play Backyard Baseball. I downloaded a ROM, got an emulator. And I played on Friday, came in after work was over. Let's be
Yeah.
clear for anyone that might be listening.
Clear.
I played like 5 hours of backyard baseball when I could have been playing Dragon's Dogma 2. And I just sat there and I had so much fun. And then what did I do Saturday morning when I woke up, Kamen? I said to Rose, we're in the living room. We had some coffee. We had some breakfast. I said, Rose, I'm going to go play a little. She's like, okay. I'll be out here doing my thing. What are you going to play? I said, I'm going to play Dragon's Dogma 2. I come right here where I'm sitting. I sit down. I open up my computer. And I see in the little corner the backyard baseball logo. And I'm like, I'll get to Dragon's Dogma 2. I played another like 3 hours of backyard baseball.
Fucking love it, dude.
I've been having a blast.
So it still holds up.
Backyard baseball. So here's the thing. It still holds up. Like
almost 30 years later.
Almost 30 years later, it still holds up. And I then went and I played a little backyard soccer. I didn't get football or hockey, but I played a little backyard soccer. And because on our socials, someone commented on last week's episode, was like, oh, I love the backyard games. My favorite was soccer. And I was like, you know what? Post episode, I had this moment of thinking, I actually think soccer was my favorite of the backyard games. So I went and I played some soccer. Not true. You know what doesn't hold up near as well? Backyard soccer. Really. Backyard baseball, though, absolutely still holds up. It's so much fun. You're drafting your team. You're doing a little season. I'm the little wombats. We got a purple outfit. I got Pablo. I got Pete. I got Amir Khan. I got Kenny Kawaguchi on the pitcher's mound. I'm having a great time. The first game I played, it took a minute to get back into the swing of things, Kamen. I'll be honest, I lost my first game.
I mean, it happens.
It happens. We all lose sometimes. And then game 2 came around and I started remembering the timing for the curveballs, for the slow balls. I don't know if you remember, but if you pitch well, you can get those crazy pitches. Like a zigzag pitch or like a fireball. I started remembering the timing of things. I won the next game like 18-0.
Hell yeah, you did.
And since then, I can't lose. I can't lose in backyard baseball. But man, I'm having a great time. This is your sign. If last week's episode or this little diatribe makes you want to go play some backyard sports, go do it. Because there's still a blast.
I think you should.
But Kamen, that's a 30-year-old game.
It's true.
Let's talk about a game that's not even, I was going to say 3 days, but it is more than 3 days old.
It's like, it's not even a week old.
Not even a week old. That's Dragon's Dogma 2.
Sure.
As we said at the top of the show, Kamen had a feeling that this was going to be Game of the Year. This wasn't on my radar for the longest time. And then we had an episode of the podcast. I don't even remember which one it was, but it was in some showcase. I was like, wait a second. This Dragon's Dogma 2 looks kind of fucking sick. And you were like, it's going to be sick. And I'm going to be the first to say, this game's fucking sick.
This game's fucking sick, dude.
Kamen, I've been talking a lot about backyard baseball. I want to hear your thoughts about Dragon's Dogma 2. And for those of you listening at home, this is going to be the rest of the show. We have a lot to say about Dragon's Dogma 2. We got Krautwan. If I'm saying that correctly, please let me know. It feels like I'm not. In the chat saying salutations. Salutations. Thanks for being here. Kamen, how are you feeling about Dragon's Dogma 2 so far?
So Patrick, let's go back in time.
Let's go back in time. Everybody, let's go back in time.
Let's go back in time. So the year I want to say was 2013.
Okay.
Skyrim comes out.
Okay. I think that was 2011 that Skyrim came out.
Was it really?
I think so. I think it was 11.
Oh my God, you're right. I was like 21. I think I was just old enough to start buying beer because I would go buy a 30-pack of High Life, sit in my apartment by myself, and just get hammered while playing Skyrim. That makes sense. Same year.
Yeah.
Skyrim comes out.
Yeah.
A little game called Dragon's Dogma releases as well. I think the reason I'm getting the 2013 is because that's, I think, when Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen came out.
Okay.
So it's important to acknowledge that there's two versions of Dragon's Dogma. There's Dragon's Dogma and then Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. Either way, Dragon's Dogma comes out a couple months after Skyrim.
Okay.
As we all know, Skyrim invented a wheel, one might say, of like what action RPG, sword and fantasy, just make you feel it was a game that Bethesda has never been able to recreate outside of just remastering and reporting the same version of that game over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
We've talked, I think, at great length. We've talked about the fact that with Starfield loses that level of mystique, the level of wonder, the what we wanted that Bethesda does so well, which is when you're wandering this open world, you're just stumbling onto things.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing. You just fucking go out and have fun. Dragon's Dogma comes out right after Skyrim, completely gets washed over. And for good reason. Dragon's Dogma, I played Dark Arisen, which is essentially Dragon's Dogma with all the DLC included.
Okay. So you played this a couple years after Skyrim because you were like me, like the rest of the world. You were into Skyrim when that first came out.
Oh yeah, no, Skyrim. I've finally platinum Skyrim. If you want to go back and listen to that episode or join Discord and read my very lengthy review, finally platinum Skyrim. But that was a game that like I tried so hard. I've put easily 300 plus hours into Skyrim.
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah.
So the thing is, Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen, whichever version you played, it was a game that wanted to do something really different and really special, but it failed. It failed because the technology just wasn't up to snuff to be able to be successful. And truthfully, I feel like without Elden Ring, I don't know if Dragon's Dogma 2 could be as successful or be as big of a hit now as if it came, if it came out before Elden Ring. I think
I'm interested in this line of thinking. Let's expand on that. What do you mean by that?
So I think the big thing here is, and to talk about why I think Elden Ring walked so that Dragon's Dogma 2 could run, is that Elden Ring does a very similar thing where you get dropped into an open world and they kind of hint to be like, hey, go here and do this. The game's narrative will just keep you moving.
Sure.
Dragon's Dogma does a very similar thing where it drops you in the world and it tells you like, hey, go here and do this. And we'll guide you a little bit. But for the most part, there are no quest markers. Your map is not cluttered. Your map is completely empty. You climb a tower to like open up parts of the map. And when you do, there's going to be little bubbles and blops everywhere. This is not an Ubisoft game.
Yeah.
If anything, this is like, I feel like Ubisoft, like this is the answer to Ubisoft's criticism.
Sure. That I would agree with, because I feel like it's not that there are no map markers. It's that it's not full of them. Like a quest, depending on the quest, there'll be like a yellow generalized area to go to that it'll highlight. It'll at least say like, hey, this is the area in which you need to go. It's somewhere in there. It's not going to be like, here's the exact point that you got to go to. So it's not like, because that was my biggest issue with Elden Ring. It didn't even give you the area. It just said, here's a map. And that's all it said. Like there wasn't a single thing on it. Whereas this, I do feel like this is a happy medium between the Ubisoft and the Elden Ring type of map style, but continue.
Sure. And I think the one thing with Elden Ring that's so different is, yes, there are side quests in Elden Ring, but they're not side quests.
Sure.
It's like you talk to an NPC, they give you some vague mumbo jumbo, and you might stumble into something later in the game that works, or you might accidentally bring them an item that moves something along for them. And then there's moments where there's full quest lines that you think are quests and they just end. And that's it.
Yeah.
There's just nothing there. And you're like, oh, wow, this meant absolutely nothing. And whether or not one might consider that to be, oh, motherfucker.
There it goes. For those listening, Kamen just lost his video, but keep going. We're still here.
It's going to do that. It's going to do that thing because this is what today has been for me.
Yeah.
Either way, Elden Ring does this thing where you can think it's good design, bad design, whatever you want. It is what it is. Dragon's Dogma kind of does something similar where it's like you need to talk to literally every NPC you come across everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they might drop something that starts a quest or progresses a quest, or you can do like what I did earlier today and completely miss the entire quest, get to the end, and the person tells me I missed everything before, leading up to this moment I'm supposed to meet them. And basically it's like, I guess your intuition wanted you to be here.
Yeah.
Holy fuck, dude.
That's it's so funny. So you texted me earlier today and you're like, I think I just like mastered the thief vocation by accident. And I was like, because of the nameless village quest. You're like, what? You just stumbled into the end of this quest in this village without going through all the steps that I went through.
Yeah.
To
Which
get
is fucking hilarious
which
to
is
me.
hilarious.
Because specifically the way it is, it never made me feel like I was supposed to be on a quest, because the person straight up just says like, I suppose your intuition just brought you here, huh? And then it's like, there's like, look, if you weren't supposed to be here, we would have killed you when you walked 1 foot into this village. And it's this moment of like, I don't know what the fuck I just did, but oh my God, this is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And like it worked. And then I found like a completely other area of this village that got me like another thing that I'm like, what is this? I didn't know you can get like auxiliary skills for certain vocations. I had no clue that was even a thing. And because I found them, they were like, all right, I'm glad you're here. Let's go ahead and give you this. And it was like they had a bet going that I wasn't going to find them. And it was like this moment of like, I don't know what the hell is going on. What I do know is that this is really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And
so you're loving this game so far.
Yes, I'm absolutely loving this game. And I think back to the original point of the Elden Ring thing and all of this is that Dragon's Dogma, when it first came out, was a very unique game. And because of the limitations in technology, but the fact there's never been a game like this before, it didn't succeed. And I really liked what they tried to do because I thought it was such an interesting thing. Like all of the mechanics are so weird and very anti-game. This is not a video game as a video game. This is quite the opposite. And
it's weird because it is and it isn't. Like there are still like there are things about it that feel very video game. Like in a way, for me, it feels like a marriage of Kingdoms of Amalur and Skyrim. But it doesn't feel like a video game in a lot of ways, in like the ways like you were saying, like with the map and with like inventory and things like that. But then like you're fighting things and you have your pawns and it's like it feels like a video game at times. It's like this. I love how it kind of straddles me, it like straddles these lines for me.
You know what I think it might be? Did you ever play? It was called what was it? Something King's Adventure.
Keep going.
Maybe it's called King's Quest or something like that. It was this old point and click adventure game that pretty much did the same. You get dropped in this world. You are an amnesiac. You don't know what the fuck you're doing, where you are. And basically you just have to click around and start putting things to random things and hope that you can end up getting from point A to point B.
I mean, King's Quest was a game from like the 80s and 90s.
I think maybe that's
probably what you're thinking of. I never played it though, so I'm not sure.
It felt a lot like, I think like Monkey's Island would be like similar in like the point and click side, but this game was very vague on what you were supposed to do and how you were supposed to do it, especially. You had no fucking idea how you were supposed to do anything. And there's moments in Dragon's Dogma that I'm like, this is, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I will come back later, and I make note in my notes app on my phone. Like, hey, come back to this particular NPC in this particular area later in the game when you think you might know what you're doing. I'm trying really hard not to use any sort of guides because I feel like using guides in a game like this type of game I think it'll make it a lot easier for people, but at the same time also like it ruins some of the mystique if you know where you're supposed to be going, because a lot of the coolest parts of this game happen unintentionally and you stumble into some wild thing happening and you're like, oh my fucking, and then you're like, oh, this is a part of a quest I was on. Oh wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So what I want to say before we kind of move on to some other portions of this is that there's another thing that I think is really important is the devs said that this was not necessarily a sequel, even though there was a 2 on it. This was a reimagining or a recreation of a game they wanted to make a decade earlier.
Huh. So like essentially this is what they wanted the original to be.
This is what they wanted the original to be.
Cool.
And it even goes so far as when you boot up the game, it doesn't say Dragon's Dogma 2. It straight up just says Dragon's Dogma.
I do love that.
And I think it's really cool that they did that and like really hammers home the part where like this is what it should be. And so I think the big thing here is like this game could have like reinvented the wheel. Like this game could have been Elden Ring but I think having Elden Ring come before it has prepped the audience to be prepared for some of these wild ass mechanics and getting prepared for like, this is not what you think it is. And you need to throw out any inclinations you have. I think Elden Ring did the same thing. You need to throw out all of your preconceived notions of what an open world sword and fantasy game is like, because this is not that. And I think Dragon's Dogma 2 does that too. And I fucking love it.
I crap one in the chat says, I was wondering why I turned the game off twice thinking that he downloaded the wrong thing. I cursed so loud. Yeah, I didn't notice it until like the second or third time I was like, wait a second. And then I did the same thing too. I was like, I looked over my Steam library. I was like, no, I'm playing 2. This is weird. But you know, I liked that a lot. Also, catching up on some things in the chat. We got Tony Thomas in the chat. Tony, I know you're a big Dragon's Dogma fan. Are you playing 2? Let us know. And then John asks the question, how many times does Patrick mute his mic to fart? 0. I don't fart.
He does it live on air. He doesn't fart.
No, I actually, anytime I'm burping, anytime I'm muting, it's usually to burp, actually, not to fart. But we don't need to be nasty, John. I am really liking this game, Kamen, and I'm going to be playing it for a while. Yeah. Especially looking ahead at what's coming out in the next few weeks. Oh, cool. Hey, Twan. Coming out in a few weeks. There's not a whole lot that's like really exciting to me right now in terms of new releases. Like, so Dragon's Dogma 2, once I get my PlayStation back, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I'm going to want to finish that. This is going to kind of be my life for a minute with gaming, which I'm excited about. But it's not all perfection for me. I'm having some problems. And these are, I think we can segue into some of the issues that myself and other people are having with the game, because you brought some patch notes that we're going to talk about. But I will say my initial thought and my initial kind of impression of the game, overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
I'm having a great time. I want to keep playing this game, but I'm also surprised in certain ways. And I'm hopeful that some of these issues that I have with it is because I'm playing it on PC. I know that a lot of PC gamers are fucking mad and in the streets with their pickaxes or pitchforks rather.
Yeah.
Pissed off about this. I'm not having that experience at all. But there's some things that I'm surprised about. Things like, I don't love that there's no easy fast travel in this game. It was one of my biggest issues with Red Dead Redemption 2. Eventually that happens, once you get camps and things. But so that certainly, back to what you were saying earlier, makes this not feel like video game as video game, because I've not fast traveled once in 14 hours, because I think I have the ability to now, but I still kind of don't even understand how it works. So that can be frustrating. But the positive side of it is that when I'm forced to go from this cave way up in the top left corner of the map, and I'm making my way all the way back to the capital, I stumble onto some cool shit on the way, which is fun. I'm a bit surprised, and me and I have talked a little bit off air pre-podcast about this. This might be a me problem, but I'm surprised that I'm having this experience of a lot of character models looking kind of shitty, but specifically with dialogue. Like, I think the actual character model looks fine, sometimes looks great even. But I'm having a conversation with them, and this isn't in cinematics. I'm out in the world. I'm just talking to an NPC. Maybe it's about a quest. Maybe it's about like buying something, and their mouth is giving straight PS2 game, like open, close, open, close. There's no like vowel shapes. There's no, like, their lips are barely moving other than just open, close, open, close. And I'm like, it's shocking to me that a game in 2024 with seemingly, I don't know what their budget was, but I'm willing to bet a pretty high budget with the way that this game looks, how big it is, and how long they've been working on it. I'm surprised that is happening. But then I sent you a video. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. And you're like, oh, that's not like that for me. So I'm like, maybe it's a PC thing. Also, I'm curious. This is a question for you. The pawns, which are like your NPC companions in the game, as you're going through the world, they'll be like, oh, I spotted a chest over there. Why don't we go look at it, master? I'm like, okay, we go there. And then it like still is on my map. Why is that a bug or is that a design choice?
I think that's a bug.
Okay.
Because I've had that issue too. However, I haven't had any NPCs trying to get me to open an open chest. It just sometimes will pop up on my map and will be there for a bit. And then it'll disappear if I go back to that same area. But like, yeah, it can be weird.
At first, when I first wrote it down in my notes, I didn't think it was a bug, but then I opened a chest and the icon went away. So it seems that like anytime an NPC opens a chest, it's stuck on my map forever.
Oh,
but anytime I open a chest, it's not. Same thing with points of interest, like the little exclamation points.
Sure.
That'll be on the map. It's a small complaint, but it's a complaint and it's annoying.
Yeah. And I think that's the truth here is there's some jank.
Yeah.
Like there's some jank. And it's not a good argument to make. That's like, hey, the truth is we're just a week. We're not even a full week into launch of this game yet.
Yeah.
The truth is, tell me the last time that a game launched day one.
True.
It was like perfect.
You're right.
I don't really even maybe like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I don't think I had a single issue at all with that game.
Yeah.
That might be the only one that I'm like,
like in recent memory, sure.
Yeah, but like massive games, like especially an open world game like this, dude. When I played fucking Assassin's Creed Mirage, which has been out
since like October,
yeah, it's like played that game, and there's still bad jank in that game that hasn't been patched, bugs and shit. It took forever for Cyberpunk to get decent. Like I said, not a good excuse, but it is something that unfortunately I think with games of this nature, the size, whatever, there are problems. Tony Thomas, handsome Tony
in the chat.
He asked, are there port crystals in Dragon's Dogma 2? Yes. So speaking of fast travel,
yes, talk to me, school me, learn me.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the weird mechanics in this game that like are going to be turnoffs to people. When I first got hands on, I was very quick to be like, hey guys, or before the game even launched, I was like, guys, they have confirmed these things have carried over from the first Dragon's Dogma. So be aware, this is going to be shell shock. So the way the game works is there's a finite resource called fairy stones. Fairy stones you use for fast travel, but for you to use them, you have to unlock port crystals wherever that is in town. Typically, there is like in the towns, there's going to like every town typically has a port crystal. You go there, you interact with it, it turns purple. Then you can use a fairy stone to fast travel that location. I've used one fairy stone so far in my 20 to probably 25 hours at this point. One fairy stone so far. And that was just so I could pop the trophy because I hadn't popped a trophy in a while. And I was like, I get that itch. Yeah. So that is the thing. You will be walking a lot. And part of the walking thing is that one, and this is what I love about this game, is this is not a typical ARPG where you pick a class and that's the class you stick with. They have what they call our vocations. Vocations are essentially classes like you would think with like Diablo or really any other ARPG that has like a very specific type of skill. So for right now, you have Thief, Ranger, Fighter, Mage. Those are your first 4 classes you can start off with. Each of those classes will be very specific to what you expect them to be, and they all play very, very different from each other, which is cool. Then you unlock like advanced vocations, and these are quest related. You have to go and do a specific thing at a specific location to start unlocking these advanced vocations. These are like hybrid classes. This is something that they did really cool that I loved about the original, and I love it even more now. So advanced vocations are, you get 2 when you do the first quest, you get 2 right off the bat. The first is warrior, which essentially is like it's more of like a fighter, but way more tank. If you like playing with weapons that are very heavy, very slow, but you can take a shit ton of damage and do a fuck ton more, that is what the warrior is. From there, you also have what they call the sorcerer, which is essentially like a more offensive version of the mage. A mage character, what I use my mage for specifically for my main pawn is I use mage for healing, pretty much healing and buffing and debuffing. So like that's what that character is just saying, making sure I will survive until that Cyclops is laying on the ground with his eyes ripped out, or his eye ripped out of his skull. But the sorcerer is going to be more, it does heavier damage, essentially like a all offensive mage, basically. Those are so advanced. There are additional advanced vocations.
There's hybrid vocations I'm seeing online.
There's like and I haven't unlocked any of these, but you have the trickster, you've got the warfare, and then you've got the magic. I think it's called the magic archer.
And there's also the spear hand, which I just unlocked right before going live.
Really?
I happened to talk to this guy, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a fighter. Would you like to learn my vocation?" And I click it, and it's like, "You've unlocked Mystic Spear Hand." I'm like, "What the fuck is this?"
So
I gotta go record.
It's like a fighter mixed with a mage. So you do have, it's not just 4 classes. There's more you can mix and match. The cool thing is with your vocations, as you start to progress, they have ranks. So you have 10 ranks of a vocation. By the time you get to the last one, you unlock obviously new abilities under that vocation. You unlock like really cool advanced versions of those. So like my mage right now can call down literally like an entire thunderstorm. And it's like insane when it happens on screen, and it does like a shit ton of damage. So you can get those by unlocking. You use skill, like you get XP that boosts your main level, and then you get DC, which are discipline, or DS, it's like discipline skills that you use for boosting, like unlocking new abilities, right? So the game is very interesting in the way that functions, but you get these things called augmentations that you can use for any of the characters, and any of your character. They're like skills you can select that are like base skills. So base skills being like, you have more maximum health, you have more maximum stamina, you can carry more stuff, you have a higher defense, stuff like that. I basically popped on high defense and high maximum health, and I put that on when I did my ranger. So now my ranger has like way more health than he should and takes way less damage than he should. But that's the perk you get for playing 25 hours of this game.
Sure.
And doing this particular stuff. So from there, you also have the pawns. Pawns are, you get one main pawn that you create that follows you wherever you go. You can change their vocation out. However, you are allowed 2 more pawns. They're party members that you use buying. You use them by purchasing Rift coins or Rift credits, RC points. You can use to hire pawns to join your team.
Yeah.
So the goal is to try to build out the most balanced team. So for me right now, I'm a ranger. I've got a mage, I've got a thief, and I've got a warrior. Yeah. So I've got a tank that is specifically drawing all the attention. I've got my healer. I've got my thief that basically does a lot of up close personal damage and is way faster. And then myself, who just hangs out in the back, fucking shooting off all sorts of crazy arrows and doing all these weird tricks and shit. Wild. So those are kind of like the base mechanics and like why this is very different.
Yeah.
And then you got all the weird stuff that Patrick has mentioned about, obviously no quest markers, no fast travel, no traditional fast travel.
Yeah.
And all
Here's a question. Your one main pawn, can you change their vocation?
Yeah.
Okay, because I haven't figured out how to do that yet, because I've wanted to try having a fight, or the warrior, like the tanky one, but my main pawn is a fighter, and I didn't want 2 of the same tanky style characters.
Sure. So what you do is when you log in and you go to change your own vocation, it gives you the option to select over to your main pawn and then change theirs. If you unlock mastery skills, for each vocation has mastery skills that are like really high, like really cool moves that you can't get until you like complete quest lines, and they are like game changers in battle. They will unlock for your main pawn as well. So you can kind of mix and match. You can kind of shift things around for your main pawn. And so you're never locked into being like, I'm stuck in this build for the rest of this, or the entirety
cool.
of this.
I do really like that a lot.
And so, yeah, so there's things, there's other things that I think, and this has been a big point of contention, especially amongst the PC crowd, was like, there's issues with microtransactions.
Which I think is such bullshit.
So I want to like kind of briefly touch base on this, because I know this has been a lot of conversations around this, and I think it's important to add context, because when people started first freaking out, they were like, this is part of the deluxe edition. If you don't get this or don't pay real world money, you cannot have these items. Things like fairy crystals that'll help you fast travel, wake stones that'll help you revive in battle, and RC points to be able to hire pawns. Truth is, you don't need to. I did the deluxe. Patrick did the deluxe. You don't need to.
Yeah.
At all. Because There are certain things in the deluxe edition you get that are kind of cool. Like you can get like a couple weapons, and you get like a shield. So there's some cool stuff, like some camping gear. Ultimately, though, you don't need any of that stuff.
And also, like you earn those things
Yeah.
naturally in the game. It's one of those. I mean, I have two kind of schools of thought about this whole microtransaction nonsense. The first being, I think people are blowing it way out of proportion. I don't think it's an issue. Essentially, like if you add it up, it's basically just what the deluxe edition costs. Like it adds up to be like $15 or whatever to just get all these things that they're selling as piecemeal.
Yeah.
But I also think like as its own thing, I don't think we should, like, a publisher should be charging for those things anyway. Like, sure. I feel like the having the ability to fast travel sooner, being, quote unquote, behind a paywall, I think is just scummy. But it's like you've designed the game to not rely on fast travel. So I just feel like this is a communication problem. Like I feel like this is just the people don't understand the game that you've designed. It's like I look at Helldivers 2 as an example where they're like, we're making the game we want to make. This is exactly what we wanted Helldivers 2 to be. As an outsider to this franchise of Dragon's Dogma, this feels like, and what you were saying earlier, this is what they wanted to make 10 years ago. This feels like they're unabashedly making the game they wanted to make. And one of those things is fast travel being a bit stingy and not being easy to use, and that's the game they wanted to make. And it's like there's this weird thing where like people are pissed that they'd have to pay for it, but they don't. It's just like this weird thing. I don't know, it's all very strange to me.
Yeah, so there's a couple things like the wake stones, and there's another thing in there that's like a prison key, and people are really upset with, they're like, you can get a prison key, and if you don't do the prison key, if you do something bad, you get locked up and can't get out and blah, 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 blah. Well, the whole thing is there's an entire area of this game. There's like a whole thing you can find. And I found a note even talking about it. That was like, hey, if you bring us certain items there, we will forge this for you for a price. And there's a moment in this game in which you can get essentially a skeleton key and you can forge. You can get a forgery made and never lose. You'll never need it. So the game is designed like, and I think the way that juxtaposes to other things that people didn't really get as pissy about was like Assassin's Creed has done it, Tales of Arise has done it, and Yakuza has like a certain thing that they do with it where it's like you can basically buy the ability to get more XP. And it's like you get like 50% more XP.
Sure.
Or with Like a Dragon, it was like you can buy level boosters to like level you up. Now, do you need it to be able to do things in the game? No. Is it there for people who want to get a little bit of an easier ride? Yes. The truth is the DLC stuff is all one-time buys. Once you're done, it's like once you buy it out, you can't get more of it. And so to a certain degree, yes, I do feel like the argument's fair that like these microtransactions almost undercut what this game was designed to be. But at the same time, this is also just a part of a larger narrative that for some reason we're just pinpointing this particular thing instead of acknowledging the fact that a lot of games do it and a lot of games do it worse.
Yeah, that's true. I agree.
So, it is what it is there. So some of the things I do want to talk about, Patrick, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
So I wanted to talk because specifically PC.
Yes.
PC's got problems.
PC's got problems. That's what the P in PC stands for.
So a couple things, patch notes for the big patch coming out. It's like week 1. I don't know when it's going to drop. I heard it was going to be by Friday. We'll have this patch. So a couple things. There's a lot of quality of life specifically for PC. 1, you can turn motion blur off, which is great. 2, ray tracing you can turn off. Okay. This is supposed to help with the issues of the FPS dropping. You can like go down. You can also commit genocide of citizens to increase your FPS on PC.
I've heard this. This is true. Have I tried it? No.
Console's locked at 30. Well, I know we've had this conversation before. It's like, my brain's too dumb to notice a difference between 30 and 60. So like, this doesn't bother me. The console's locked at 30. Either way. So the next thing is option to set frame rate to variable or max settings mode. So basically,
that's already live, actually.
That's already live. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that was something that was like, hey, you can set it, you can drop your frames and set your frames at certain things so that you can have better visuals, or set your visuals a little lower
Yeah.
to have better frames. Either way, there's also a huge patch for PC specific for crashes, bugs, drops in FPS, etc. And then they are also adding additional save files so that if you want to create a new
Thank
character, you
fucking
can.
God.
Yeah,
That
that was dumb that wasn't included at launch,
yeah.
but I don't
I've
know.
done a lot of complaining about like what are giving bugs or are, like what's caused like that kind of stuff. But my two biggest complaints with the game that are design choices, one of them
Mhm.
sounds like it's being fixed. This
Yeah.
there's only two saves. There's the manual save, and then anytime you sleep at an inn, and like apparently an autosave like goes over your manual save. Like I don't like that at all. Because like I've talked about on this show before, one of my biggest issues with games nowadays is like when you pause it, it doesn't pause. Love the Dragon's Dogma 2 lets you pause. But I feel like I'm kind of over the silent protagonist with this kind of a game.
Yeah.
I feel like that like Baldur's Gate 3 kind of had a silent protagonist, but the narrator in a lot of ways felt like the protagonist. And the protagonist still spoke from time to time, like in very small ways. Like in dialogue, not just like, oh boy, I'm jumping. Like that's not something they would say. But you know what I'm saying? There's like random like
The
sounds and the grunts and
yeah.
But this game, I feel like, so one of the questions that was sent into us from friend of the show, Jordan, said, how's the story? I hear a lot about the other aspects, but not much about the story. And I feel like the reason that you're not hearing much about the story is that the story takes a backseat to the gameplay in this game, which in my experience so far, at least, as someone who has been actively doing like quests, it feels like the quests are like, hey, go do this thing that's going to be fun, and maybe we'll give you like a little bit of story. I feel like the story is just not at the forefront of this game for me so far, which I don't have a problem with. It seems like they're going to give some more story later, but like I do wish that there was a bit more, and I hope that there's a bit more. But I think, Jordan, the reason you're not hearing about it is that I don't think there seems to be that compelling of a story with this game.
So it's interesting you say that. A lot of the reviews that I've seen is people have been like, look, the beginning quests, like the first several quests, seem like there's really no urgency here. There's not like you're go here, do this, and it's fun, but apparently at a certain point, the story takes like the full.
Oh, good. I'm glad to
And
hear that.
there's what I heard, and I don't know, I'm 25 hours in. I haven't even progressed nearly as far as Patrick has in the main quest because I've just been fucking around being a nuisance. So apparently there's a moment in the game that some crazy shit goes down, and then like the narrative just shoots through the roof,
cool.
and like there's a big driving point. So that remains to be seen. One thing I think it's interesting to point out, I'd like the fact that you bring up Baldur's Gate and how Baldur's Gate functions, because I think that this game is like Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate meet somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
And I want to bring in a member of our audience sent in an initial impressions that they have.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's talk
I
about
think, if I'm not mistaken, they're live in the chat right now.
Oh, is this Tuan?
This is Tuan. This
Hell
is
yeah.
Antoine. This is what he has to say. He says, I was very hyped on this game after watching the show Dragon's Dogma on Netflix. I've never played the first Dragon's Dogma game, and only recently in my gaming career have I been playing games like Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, and Diablo 4. I'm usually a Tekken, Soul Calibur, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat player, fighters, or Overwatch, Fortnite, Destiny player shooters. So take my review with a grain of salt, as I haven't made it terribly far in the game, and I also feel like I was spoiled by Baldur's Gate 3. While I enjoy the battle system, the beautiful landscapes map, and the amazing 10 out of 10 character creation, the pawns and NPCs feel hollow and lifeless.
Okay.
I can only imagine this must have been worse in the first game considering the time since the sequel. Action sequences and cutscenes can take me deep into a game with little problem, usually. But my standards have shifted in certain aspects. I played Baldur's Gate 3 almost religiously, 4 full playthroughs and a half attempted a fifth. I feel as I was spoiled because the dialogue for the vast majority of the people you interact with is varied. There's so much personality in the NPCs, and the banter between your party during travel is hilarious, insightful, and builds on the individual personalities. Dragon's Dogma said, of course, We will put the option to discuss additional matters with NPCs or your pawns, but we're going to give you one still ass line for each option and don't expect much variation.
He's not wrong there.
They repeat the same lines over and over during travel, and because you cover so much ground traversing to and from locations, it's become so annoying early on. I hear that the AI for pawns grows as you play, so they may provide additional tips and guidance when accomplishing something, which is dope, but doesn't make me intrigued into the pawns much at all. I feel like it feels like a waste to create such a detailed main character and pawn just for me to never care about talking to them at all. I don't know. I'm going to continue to play this game and experience the world and take in all of the other things it has to offer, and hopefully my opinion of that will change or not affect my opinion of the game as a whole. We shall see. He then gives a rating where he said gameplay, battle systems, 8 out of 10, story cutscenes, 8 out of 10, landscape scenery, 10 out of 10, character creation, 10 out of 10, pawns and NPCs, 4 out of 10.
Sure.
He also says special shout out to the character creation in terms of people of color. Finally, diversity in black hairstyles. I'm tired of choosing a bald fade or one cornrows or one dread design, which is very true.
For sure.
Yes, that is accurate. I've noticed that. And there's being part of gaming Twitter, I feel like there's a lot of people like Khalif Adams in Paris who talk about the fact that like you get like 3 options.
Yeah. It's
and
never good. Yeah.
I do love the fact that they did that. Also,
shout out to Capcom for that.
You can get Ichiban's hair.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So maybe I'll create a new character because my character looks like Bruce Campbell.
Hell yeah.
I did Army of Darkness, Bruce. So
hell yeah.
So yeah, I think to Chuan's point, he's not necessarily wrong.
I think he hits a lot of stuff right on the head for me. And I think it's so funny that he said that Baldur's Gate spoiled him, because I'm pretty sure on the show we talked about how we were afraid Baldur's Gate 3 was going to ruin a lot of RPGs in the future, because it did such an amazing job at telling such an interactive and engaging story with incredibly written characters. And this game, so much so, like with what he was saying about the pawn system, I can go into one of these rifts and I can get a cookie cutter version of like 17 different pawns that are all like the same. And there was this, I had this kind of illusion breaking moment, which was disappointing. So my main pawn, his name is Rafe. He's a cat person, which Pit and Nat, I want to know about these cat people because I still don't understand them, but maybe you, having played the first one, will have an answer for me. He's got kind of a deep voice. It sounds kind of like this. He said, "Look, master, there's a chest. I wonder how we can get to it," every fucking 5 seconds. And then I come across this guy on a path. It's me. He's a fighter. I have a mage and I have a ranger. And this ranger walks up to me, big fucking dude. And he like initiates the conversation, and he's like, "Hello, I'm here. I'm looking to see if you need some help." And he has the exact same voice as Rafe, my main pawn. He's like 5 levels above my current archer. So I'm like, "Oh, great. No, yeah, get rid of you." It was someone who made a very compelling Daenerys Targaryen.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen a couple of those.
And so I got rid of Daenerys, who was a level like 9, and got this level 20 archer, but he sounds exactly like my guy. So I'm running down, and like they start talking to each other, and it's like one guy talking to himself, but it's 2 people, and they're having the most stupid conversation that I've already heard 5 times. Like, my master only ever has pawns that are all women. Oh, that makes me think that's not something I've considered. And it's like this. It's like really frustrating that they sound the exact same.
Dude, okay.
And they're having the conversation that I've already heard happen 7 times.
I was telling Edgewater earlier about this. I had this ranger who was a Beastren, and he had this voice.
Yeah,
I swear to fucking God, it was like this. Hello. What you doing walking up that path? I don't think that's the right way to go. And I was like, here's the thing. I was like, immediately, I was like, I fucked up. I want to throw you off a cliff. Yeah. Here's the thing. I had the option and I just never did it. And I regret not throwing him off a cliff, which brings us to a great point. You can throw your pawns off a cliff.
Which brings a great point. Have you heard about this dragon's plague that pawns can get?
Oh my god, where they turn murderous?
Yes. And they can, so there's this thing that like pawns can get this disease that they pass to other pawns in the rift. And if they like, they'll be in your game. I haven't experienced it yet, thankfully.
I haven't either, but I've heard about this. And they even have mentioned it in dialogue. Like,
Yeah.
wow, we probably should not.
And like, so apparently what happens, I guess this is potential spoilers, but it's like, it's an event that could happen that would end up like setting back your progress. So you probably want to know about this, honestly. Your NPC or your pawns can start like sounding like gibberish, and they're like the things that they say don't make sense, and their eyes start going red. And apparently that's the sign that they've gotten this dragon's plague. And what'll happen, Kamen, if you don't address the dragon's plague with this pawn, if you don't either like let them die, kill them, or if it's a hired pawn, if you don't get rid of them, there will come a time that you go to sleep in an inn, and there'll be a cutscene in the middle of the night that your pawn. This might be like potential spoilers, but it was spoiled for me. So like heads up in case you don't want to hear this. But apparently what happens is they turn into a dragon and completely destroy the entire village you're in. And so if there's NPCs there that matter, if there's quests there that matter, all that is killed. And so then you would have to like load an old save, or else all that shit's just gone.
Oh
And so
my god.
so it's like if your pawns get the dragon's plague, fucking get rid of them, or else they're gonna really negatively impact your game. Like it's a fun concept, but if that happened to me, I'd be so pissed.
That's what I think why I love this game so much is
Yeah.
that shit is insane.
Yeah, it is insane.
So I think, yeah. So I want to, you asked a question about Beastren. Beastren are essentially like second class citizens.
Okay, of course they are.
Yeah. And so it's kind of a trope that I feel like you see a lot in games like this.
You do. That's actually a little disappointing, but continue.
Yeah, there's more lore to it, obviously, but basically they're considered to be like beasts.
Okay.
And so
is there a reason that they're only cats? Like there aren't like other types of, is there like a narrative reason for that? Or
I don't remember if there's a narrative reason in the first game. It's been a while since I played it. Probably look it up. But there's one particular quest line that you do with a character who is a Beastren, and that's like a big part of like his storyline. Like his quest is like it's a really, really cool quest, and I really can't wait to finish it because he told me at the end of the part that I got to is like, hey, I'm going to be heading to help out this other camp.
Oh yeah, I got to that same part too, but I've not done the next part.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to head to this camp. Would love if you seek me out. I would love to meet you there, and I'll we'll chat.
Yeah,
like that's really cool. And I love his storyline. I think is really interesting. Gives you a little bit of like vague context clues and like.
That makes sense now that you say that. Like the things that happen in the quest.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
The other thing is the pawn system. Some people have been like asking about what the pawns are, what the system is, XYZ. So pawns can never die, but they can die.
Yeah, it's weird.
So there are these like ethereal beings that are used pretty much like slave labor and will fall like they're there only to help when the Arisen comes. They are there to help the Arisen, which is the main character. And they're there to be able, they're there for them. And in the meantime, they just get abused because they don't have like willpower of their own to do one thing or another.
Interesting. Okay.
So like it's
that's like narratively like that. That's not just they're not just like an NPC character. That
no. Yeah, okay. They're these like willless. That's the whole thing. Like they've been talking there, like you'll get this about the whole them turning into dragons. They actually will talk and you'll get like lines of dialogue where they'll be like, hey, have you heard about this? Some pawns are getting willpower.
Whoa, cool.
And are rebelling against their masters because the rift itself is like essentially a hub for all of these worlds. So basically the whole setup is that there's a multiverse. And the main pawn you create can be picked up and hired. So I can play, it's not cross-platform yet, but apparently they're going to bring it where I could get Patrick's pawn to be on my group. I could have his fighter come join us. Or I could have someone else's pawn. I know Mondo's playing right now. I could have his pawn come join my team and stuff like that. And so it's like the Rift is like a multiverse where all of these pawns will just go in and out. So you'll have times where you'll stop in an inn and your pawn will like stop you and be like, I was just hanging out in the Rift while you were asleep. And I went on a crazy fucking adventure. Let me tell you in the world about all of these things the other master found. That's so the big reason why there's no quest markers is because you're supposed to utilize your pawns to help you. And by getting pawns that are quest givers, they will have like taken their experience they've had in other people's games and then show you, hey, here's a hidden temple underground that you never would have found unless you like literally blew up this rock. Or here's a quest, like here I can take you to where this quest is because I did this with in someone else's universe.
I love it when they say that.
Really cool aspect. I think it's like so interesting. We were doing so well this.
We were doing so
well. So like it's really interesting how they do these things. I think it's really cool. Really appreciate how unique of a system it is. And we asked the question early on in the episode where it was like, do I think this is still game of the year? Now, keep in mind, I haven't played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So take what I say with a grain of salt. I think as of right now, this game has really high potential to be game of the year.
I think there's a good shot for sure. I also agree.
You know, and that's saying like, I don't know, there might be some game changing thing that happens in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, like reinvents the wheel or does something different. But the big thing that I'll always say about game of the year is game of the year, a lot of times is going to be games that do something so different that they stand apart for achieving something. So like last year, Baldur's Gate 3 winning game of the year because it did something so different. Elden Ring, same thing. I don't know how this currently as of right now, we're not even in April yet. And there's probably a bunch of big games coming out. I don't honestly think there is at this point. I think all the good games are already been out because my fantasy critic reflects that.
That's embarrassing.
So
I looked at it today. It's embarrassing.
So with that being said, though, I do think that, yes, this game 1000% has the chance to be game of the year. I think there is no world in which I don't think that it wins a bunch of awards. And there are things like Antoine pointed out that aren't great. I think the pawns can be a bit lifeless. Narratively, there's a reason, but at the same time, too, is that a good excuse? I don't think so.
I don't think so either, yeah.
But I think this game does so much right that I legitimately think like there is a chance that this thing could go in and pull a BG3 and just sweep.
I think there's a chance too, because for me, like I was talking with Jordan, Cognitive Clips, like for me right now, this is my game of the year so far, but it's because I am more drawn to the RPG genre than what I had said last week or the week before. Like my game of the year was Helldivers 2 at that point.
Yeah.
And we're not even done with Q1. Like it's silly that we're even talking about game of the year yet, but that's why we do this. Like we love these kinds of conversations. And for me, like when I look ahead, I think, at the end of last year, I had predicted that I could see a world in which Hellblade 2 could be game of the year. And I think that could fall into that conversation of like, is doing something different based on what we've seen. That comes out in May. We'll know then. But like, I do think that you're right that this game, it's what it is setting out to do. It is doing incredibly well.
Yes.
And I think that's the kind of thing that really sets this game apart and this type of game apart from its contemporaries, is that like there can be a game that just like looks great, feels great, sounds great, but there are 5 other games that do something similar or do something just as well. But it doesn't necessarily have that like kind of unique identity. And I do think that Dragon's Dogma 2 has a bit of a unique identity, and the pawns are, I think, a big part of that. And I think that's really cool. I like that they kind of serve a purpose of what you were saying with the Rift of like, they'll help you explore areas and be like, hey, I know about this thing over there. If you want to go do that, like they think that's cool. And down to like a really simple level of like, they'll just pick shit up for you. Like that feels great. Like, I don't like,
have you had them craft things for you yet?
Not yet. I've not had any crafting yet.
So I had a pawn that was with me. That's like character trait was crafting.
I need to learn more about these character traits because I've not
Dude, yeah.
clocked them yet. But the one that I talked about earlier that came and joined my party, he was like, I'll buy anything off of you. And I was like, oh, that's weird. But that must be his trait.
Yeah.
But I don't understand traits, but I don't want to get off topic. Keep going.
Yes. So like I had a pawn that was with me that was like, that was their character trait, was crafting. And so every once in a while they'll be like, hey, I picked up some raspberries and some green wife. And so I made you a health potion.
Cool.
That's
really cool. I need to find one of those.
And it's just like it's certain, like I have my main pawn has a particular, like you can give them an item that gives them like a certain character, like an additional character trait that like will do. So my main pawn, they will heal others using items.
Cool.
So that'll be like, because you can go in your menu and like select like this person's hurt. Let me give them some stuff. As long as I'm close enough to them, I can give them an item, and it'll heal them in real time. My pawn will like do that. What I also love, I don't know if you've had this yet, was the pawns learn from when they play with their own master. And so I had one who was like, what they would do is they were an archer. They would run and grab a pawn, run them back and drop them, and then give me covering fire while I heal.
That's cool.
And it's like that level of like, yes, the AI is personality wise is non-existent. However, these mechanics are so deep.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. Even though there's a lot to criticize about the pawns from a story perspective and from a like experience perspective of them being annoying, because I'm having that exact same experience, the level of AI in this game is actually really impressive. Yeah. The way that how smart your AI can be. And I feel like I can really tell when I'm down a pawn. Like I had my pawn fell in water and died. Apparently water just like kills you in this game.
Oh, water kills everyone but the Arisen.
Which is hilarious. And I really noticed with down a pawn, because I'm doing what you're doing. I have one of each other class type than what I am for my pawns. I really noticed a difference going from 4 to 3 total characters in my party. And I like that. Like I like that losing a character or losing a companion, you really feel the weight of it, because something that I think we've actually not talked about surprisingly in an hour is these moments of like, we've alluded to it, but you're going through the woods and you're going from point A to point B. Maybe it's night, maybe it's day, doesn't matter. And there'll be this like kind of cinematic shift in the camera, and all of a sudden like an ogre comes out of the woods.
Dude, those
and
moments
then now you're having this, like you're having to fight this thing that's 5 times your size. And I'm a bit surprised at how like little trouble I'm having with this game from a combat perspective. I had heard, whether it was you or like other people online, talk about like the difficulty of Dragon's Dogma, and I've not really had any issues with difficulty so far, other than with a griffin. You had mentioned you had
those things
griffins are fucking
griffins
possible.
and dragons. If you're below, I don't even know. I can't even touch it. Still.
But I like, it's not that they're easy, but I never feel like I'm gonna die, and I like that. Like I like that it's not at such a difficulty like Elden Ring, where I'm fighting these like sea level enemies and dying and losing all my shit. Like I like that they're different because they're big and they have a lot more health and they have like multiple levels of health.
And their strategy, it's almost like they're like boss fights in the sense where like they have like multiple health bars. So once you get a health bar down, like you have to change strategies, especially I think like one of the big ones is like the Minotaur is like pretty easy for the first health. It's not, but once you like take it down,
it gets so aggressive.
It gets and then you have to come. It's like you can't even ride that son of a bitch.
Yeah, he'll immediately throw you off, and I love that.
And so you have to change. So it's like having miniature boss fights. You get better and better, and your pawns. If you pick up pawns who have badges for these particular enemy types, they will know weak points and start exploiting weak points. They'll start hitting them in certain ways. They'll tell you, here, do this differently. And they interact. So it's like such a cool thing. Here's the thing, Patrick.
Yeah. Tell me the thing.
We've talked for an hour now about Dragon's Dogma. Yeah. I've been very open about how the fact that I was very hyped for the game. I feel like it hit all of my expectations. I'm loving my time with this game. Yeah. And I don't know when I'm going to put it down. This is one of those games where I really, also, by the way, on the Portal, plays so well on the Portal.
Ooh, hell yeah.
That like it will never stop this game. 100 hours easy. So I want to ask you this question because I
Yes.
feel like we might have I don't know how we're going to approach this. Do you recommend it to anyone?
Actually,
Mhm.
I do think we're going to disagree because I don't see a reason why you shouldn't play this game if you like RPGs.
Mhm.
Like I don't, and maybe it's like my build of being a thief with like the different pawns that I'm having, but in terms like what I was just saying with combat, I don't feel like this game is overly difficult, and I feel like the only part that if you really like a Skyrim type game, from a gameplay perspective, I feel like the only thing that might hold you back is the fast travel bit.
Mhm.
But like if you get past that, I don't see a reason why you won't like this game unless you just don't like the way the game feels, which is that
Mhm.
varies from person to person. um but just like an actual like from a gameplay level, from an open world level, I think this game is great, and I think if you like that kind of game, I'd be surprised that you wouldn't like Dragon Dogma 2.
Yeah, I messaged Boston Mike and I said, "Hey, bud, please don't get this game.
I
Please."
disagree, but continue.
I said, "Please don't get this game." I said, "Buddy, please play Final Fantasy instead. Go play Fortnite. Go do something that's not this game." What I don't want you to do is get this game and then 5 hours in tell me you wasted $70 on a video game and it's my fault and I should be put in prison. This has happened before.
You should be put in prison.
I should be put in prison. It's happened before. And I'm like, buddy, just don't do this to me right now. I mental health is deteriorating quickly. I can't handle it. Here's the thing though. I think my initial opinion on it has shifted.
Okay.
So early on, I was very quick to be like, look, there are a lot of systems in play here, whether it's like the weird save system, the no quest markers, the really no clue of what you're supposed to be doing, the fast travel system, some of the more brutal elements, like the fact that your food in your inventory that you use to cook at camps rots in real time.
Sure. Yeah.
It literally rots and you can't eat it. Or if you do eat it, it'll make you sick.
Yeah.
So like there are things here. And so when a lot of times, and me personally was saying this, like the difficulty of Dragon's Dogma comes within its mechanics, not the actual enemy difficulty.
Okay.
And so I think early on, I was very hesitant to recommend it to anyone. And I was like, I don't think anyone but me is going to want to play. People that like survival games will enjoy this. The more I play it, the more I'm like, if you give it 10 hours, I promise you'll be fucking hooked.
I don't even know if you need 10.
Yeah, maybe 5, maybe not even that long. Like once you get to that first moment when you down an ogre for the first time, or take down a troll for the first time, or sorry, ogre and a cyclops.
Cyclops, yeah, the first one's a cyclops.
When you take down one of those for the first time, it is going to, the hooks will be so deep into you, you will not want to stop.
Boston Mike, I know you're listening. Kamen says he told you not to buy this game. I say buy this game. I think you are going to love this game. I think that it is a fun fucking RPG.
Dude,
like
it's so fun.
It's so fun. I feel like it earlier I was saying in one of my complaints with like the narrative not feeling great. This is the game for me where I'm having so much fun playing it. I don't necessarily mind that the story isn't really moving me, and you said it picks up, which I'm excited for, but like I think the game itself is so fun, issues aside that we talked about with the pawns and things like that. I just think it's a fucking fun RPG. Like it feels like, I know Skyrim can be third person, but it feels like a Skyrim specifically designed to be in the third person, with much smoother gameplay,
yes,
much smoother combat, and a world that is just as fun to explore.
Yes.
Now, is this going to be an all-timer for me as of today? I don't know, but I think it's my clear front runner for game of the year so far. And I think I absolutely would recommend this to anyone that likes an action RPG.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think I think closing statements, closing thoughts for me would be, this is the first time since Skyrim that I felt that sense of wonder and that sense of adventure, where I don't know what's going to be lurking around every corner. And there's so much that we haven't even touched upon, like what happens when it gets dark outside.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, there's so many things that you will discover on your own. There's so many weird quests. There's so many funny as hell moments with some of these characters that, like, I haven't had this since Skyrim. And the truth is, I just platinum Skyrim, and I know my playthrough is probably a lot different than like what it would have been if I was just playing casually. But like, there are moments in this game and quest lines that I've completed that I've like, dude, this will stick with me, like they did in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah,
These level of like,
cool.
What a weird fucking thing. I had no idea that I was stalking a philandering guy who is a liar and a cheater, and then I'm gonna steal his clothes and blackmail him. I didn't know that was gonna fucking happen.
Well, I haven't done that one yet.
And what I love about it is, just like with Skyrim, is like everyone's gonna have a different experience when you play it. And I think this game is genius in so many ways. And the flaws that are there, when there are, I don't think they're anywhere near close to derail this from being like a definite top 100 game in 10 years.
Cool. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree so far. I think it's a really fucking good game. It's a really well-made game with a great design, and I'm excited to play it. In fact, once we're on recording and I have a little more food because I'm a little hungry now, I think I'm going to play some more Dragon's Dogma 2.
I love it.
If you're listening, if you're watching, if you're playing Dragon's Dogma 2, let us know what you think. Just like Mondo did when I asked online on Instagram. He just said, in all caps, simply amazing. That's what he thinks of the game. But let us know what you think. Are you enjoying this game? Let us know. You can follow us on Twitter at SpotGamesPod. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch at Spotlight GamesPod. You can follow me on Twitter at Patrick Schwag. Kamen, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at the Dumpster Boy. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's it, right?
There you go. Don't forget, tomorrow night, if you're live, we're going to be streaming some Stardew with Rose, 8 p.m. right here, twitch.tv/SpotlightGamesPod. Go play Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah,
and
go play it.
Thanks for being here. We had Jordan, we had Twan, we had Tony, we had John, we had a few, we had Terry earlier. Thanks for being here. If you're listening to this later, join us next Tuesday right here, 8 p.m. Eastern time on twitch.tv/SpotlightGamesPod. And in a few weeks, we're bringing back Jerica, Kayla, Jordan, aka Cognitive Clips, to talk about Fantasy Critic League updates. So stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter so that you know when that's happening. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.